Jeremy Walsh stood in the doorway of the abandoned hunting cabin, his flashlight beam cutting through 14 years of accumulated dust and decay. It was March 2005, and he had come to Colorado's Remy. What he found instead would reopen one of the state's most haunting cold cases. The cabin sat 3 miles off the nearest Forest Service road, hidden among dense pine trees at an elevation of 9,000 feet. Jeremy had nearly missed it entirely, but a glint of reflected sunlight off a broken window had caught his eye. The structure was small, maybe 20 by 15 feet, with walls of weathered logs and a partially collapsed roof. Someone had boarded up the front door years ago, but the boards had rotted and fallen away. Jeremy pushed the door open. The hinges screamed. Inside, the single room was empty except for an overturned chair, scattered beer cans, and what looked like the remnants of a camping stove. He swept his flashlight across the far wall and froze. A sleeping bag lay in the corner, partially covered by a green tarp that had deteriorated into tatters. The shape underneath was unmistakably human. Jeremy backed out of the cabin and called 911 on his satellite phone. His hands shook as he gave the dispatcher the GPS coordinates. He had no cell service, but the satellite connection held. The dispatcher told him to wait outside and not to touch anything. He sat on a fallen log 50 feet from the cabin door and waited. 2 hours later, Sheriff Martin Kozlowski arrived with 3 deputies and the county coroner. Jeremy watched as they entered the cabin wearing gloves and masks. 15 minutes later, Sheriff Kozlowski emerged and walked over to where Jeremy sat. "How long since you went inside?" Kozlowski asked. "About 2.5 hours. I called right away." "You touch anything?" "No, sir. Just opened the door and looked inside. Saw the sleeping bag and backed out." Kozlowski nodded. He was in his late 50s, with gray hair and a weathered face that suggested decades of Colorado winters. "We have a body. Male, approximately 20 years old. Been there a long time. Remains are mostly skeletal. We found a wallet in his jacket pocket." Jeremy felt his stomach turn. "Do you know who it is?" "Driver's license says Brandon Pierce, 22 years old. Address in Denver." Kozlowski paused, studying Jeremy's face. "That name mean anything to you?" "No, sir. The license expired in 1991, 14 years ago." Kozlowski pulled out a notebook. "You familiar with the Cottonwood Pass disappearance?" Jeremy shook his head. He had moved to Colorado only 3 years ago from California. Kozlowski flipped through his notebook. June 1991. 4 college students drove up to Buena Vista for a camping trip. They never came back. We found their vehicle abandoned near Cottonwood Pass 2 weeks after they were reported missing. Tents were set up at a campsite about a mile from where they left the car. Food was still in coolers. Sleeping bags were laid out, but no sign of the 4 students. "This is one of them?" Brandon Pierce was one of the 4. He was 22, just graduated from University of Colorado Boulder with a degree in geology. The others were Sarah Chen, 19, freshman at Metro State, Tyler Hammond, 20, sophomore at CU Boulder, and Rachel Simmons, 18, about to start her freshman year at Colorado State. Jeremy watched as 2 deputies carried a stretcher from the cabin. The body bag was surprisingly small. 14 years of decomposition had reduced Brandon Pierce to bones and remnants of clothing. "This cabin is 12 miles from where we found their vehicle," Kozlowski continued. 12 miles through some of the roughest terrain in the forest. No trails, no roads. How did one of them end up here? What happened to the others? That is exactly what I intend to find out. Kozlowski closed his notebook. The case went cold in 1993. We searched for months, brought in search and rescue teams from 5 counties, had volunteers combing every square mile within a 20-mile radius of their campsite. Found nothing. Not a single trace. It was like they vanished into thin air. The coroner emerged from the cabin carrying 2 evidence bags. He walked over to where Kozlowski and Jeremy stood. Preliminary assessment. Male victim, early 20s. Deceased approximately 10 to 15 years, based on decomposition and environmental factors. Remains are partially mummified due to the dry conditions inside the cabin. No obvious signs of trauma to the bones, but we will need a full forensic examination. Found these items with the body. He held up the evidence bags. One contained the wallet Kozlowski had mentioned. The other contained what looked like a small notebook with a water-damaged cover. "What is in the notebook?" Kozlowski asked. "Have not opened it yet. Too fragile. We will need to examine it in the lab, but I could see writing through the plastic evidence bag. Looks like journal entries or notes." Kozlowski turned back to Jeremy. "I am going to need a full statement from you. Deputy Morrison will take you back to the station in Buena Vista. We will process the scene here and transport the remains to the county morgue in Salida." Jeremy nodded. He followed Deputy Morrison to the patrol vehicle parked on the Forest Service road. As they drove away, he looked back at the cabin. What had happened to Brandon Pierce? And where were the other 3 students who had disappeared with him? At the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office in Buena Vista, Jeremy spent 90 minutes giving his statement to Deputy Morrison. He described finding the cabin, seeing the body, and calling 911. Morrison asked him to sign the typed statement and told him he was free to go but should remain available for follow-up questions. Jeremy drove to the motel where he had rented a room for the week. He sat on the bed and opened his laptop, searching for information about the 1991 disappearance. The story filled dozens of news articles from the summer and fall of that year. 4 students missing after camping trip near Cottonwood Pass. Massive search yields no clues. Families plead for information. 1 year later, still no answers. The coverage gradually diminished as the case went cold. The last article he found was from June 1993, marking the 2-year anniversary of the disappearance. After that, nothing. Jeremy found a website maintained by Brandon Pierce's sister, Melissa. She had created it in 1999 to keep the case in the public eye. The site included photos of all 4 students, timelines of their last known movements, and theories about what might have happened. Melissa had not updated the site since 2002. He looked at the photos. Brandon Pierce had been tall and athletic, with dark hair and a broad smile. Sarah Chen was petite, with long black hair and glasses. Tyler Hammond had sandy blonde hair and wore a CU Boulder football jersey in his photo. Rachel Simmons had red hair and freckles, looking younger than her 18 years. They had been so young, barely adults. Now one of them was dead in a county morgue, and 3 were still missing after 14 years. Jeremy closed his laptop and stared at the ceiling. He had come to Colorado to make a documentary about abandoned mining towns. Instead, he had stumbled into something far more disturbing. His phone rang. It was Sheriff Kozlowski. "Mr. Walsh, we have finished processing the scene. I wanted to thank you for calling this in promptly and not disturbing the evidence. You did everything right. Have you notified the family? I am about to call Brandon Pierce's parents now. They live in Denver. This is going to be very difficult for them. They have spent 14 years hoping their son was alive somewhere. Now they have to face the reality that he has been dead this entire time. What about the notebook the coroner found? We are sending it to the state crime lab in Denver. They have specialists who can preserve and examine fragile documents. If there is anything readable in there, they will find it. That notebook might tell us what happened to those 4 students." Kozlowski paused. "There is something else. We found marks on the cabin door. On the inside. Scratches in the wood like someone tried to claw their way out. The door was not locked, but there were remnants of rope still attached to the outside handle. Someone tied that door shut. Brandon Pierce did not die of natural causes. He was trapped in that cabin and left to die." The original investigation. Sheriff Kozlowski sat in his office at 6 in the morning on March 16th, reviewing the original case files from 1991. He had not been sheriff back then. He had been a deputy working patrol in Salida. His predecessor, Sheriff Robert Cartwright, had led the investigation into the disappearance of the 4 students. Cartwright had retired in 1998 and moved to Arizona. Kozlowski called him at 7. "Bob, it is Martin Kozlowski in Buena Vista. We need to talk about the Cottonwood Pass case." There was a long silence on the other end. "That was 14 years ago, Martin. Why are you calling me about that now?" "Because we found one of them, Brandon Pierce. His body was in an abandoned hunting cabin 12 miles from the original campsite. He has been dead the entire time. Someone trapped him in that cabin and left him to die." Cartwright exhaled slowly. "Jesus Christ! After all these years, I always hoped they were alive somewhere. Maybe had some kind of accident and got amnesia, or ran away to start new lives. You are telling me it was murder? The evidence suggests that. The cabin door was tied shut from the outside. He could not get out. We found scratch marks on the inside of the door where he tried to escape. What can you tell me about the original investigation? Cartwright spent the next hour walking Kozlowski through everything he remembered. The 4 students had left Denver on June 14, 1991, in Brandon Pierce's 1987 Toyota 4Runner. They told their families they were going camping near Buena Vista for 4 days. They planned to hike some trails, do some fishing, and come back on June 18th. When they did not return by June 19th, Brandon's parents called the sheriff's office. Deputies found the 4Runner parked at a trailhead near Cottonwood Pass on June 20th. The vehicle was unlocked. Keys were in the ignition. Their campsite was a mile up the trail. 2 tents were set up. Sleeping bags were laid out inside. A cooler contained food that had spoiled in the June heat. A camp stove sat on a flat rock. Fishing gear leaned against a tree. But no sign of the 4 students. We searched for 3 months, Cartwright said. Had every available deputy, plus volunteers from 3 counties, plus search and rescue teams with dogs. We covered 100 square miles of forest. Found nothing. Not a piece of clothing, not a backpack, not a single footprint leading away from that campsite. It was like they evaporated. Fight? What was your theory? Kozlowski asked. Honestly, I had no idea. None of it made sense. If they had gone for a hike and gotten lost, we would have found some trace of them. If there had been an animal attack, we would have found blood or torn clothing. If they had been abducted, why was their vehicle still there with the keys in it? Who would take 4 people at once? And how would you transport 4 adults without anyone seeing anything? Did you have any suspects? We looked at everyone. Interviewed every person who had been in the area that week. Checked every vehicle that came through the area. Ran background checks on anyone who had prior convictions. Came up empty. There was no evidence of foul play at the campsite. No signs of struggle. No blood. Nothing disturbed. They just vanished. Kozlowski made notes as Cartwright talked. What about the families? Any issues there? The families were devastated. Brandon's parents, Michael and Linda Pierce, cooperated fully with the investigation. They gave us access to Brandon's room, his bank records, his phone records, everything. Sarah Chen's parents flew in from California. They barely spoke English, but they were desperate to find their daughter. Tyler Hammond's father was in the military, stationed in Germany at the time. His mother lived in Colorado Springs. Rachel Simmons was from Fort Collins. Her parents were divorced. Mother lived in Denver. Father lived in Wyoming. Any financial problems? Drug issues? Reason to run away? Nothing. Brandon had just graduated with honors. Had a job lined up with a geological survey company starting in August. Sarah was on the dean's list at Metro State. Tyler was on the football team, had a partial scholarship. Rachel had a full ride to Colorado State for engineering. These were good kids from stable families. No reason to disappear. Kozlowski leaned back in his chair. The cabin where we found Brandon is in a very remote location. No trails lead to it. You would need a GPS or detailed knowledge of the area to find it. Did any of the 4 students have connections to that part of the forest? Brandon grew up camping and hiking in Colorado. He knew the backcountry better than most, but I never heard anything about him going to that specific area. Who owned the cabin? I have no idea. There are dozens of old hunting cabins scattered throughout Pike National Forest. Most were built illegally decades ago. Forest Service has been trying to catalog and remove them for years. If someone used that cabin to trap Brandon, they knew it was there. After hanging up with Cartwright, Kozlowski pulled the property records for the section of forest where Jeremy Walsh had found the cabin. The records showed the land was federal forest land managed by the Pike National Forest Service. No private property existed within 5 miles of the cabin location. He called the Forest Service office in Salida. The ranger he spoke with checked their database. We have that structure listed as an unauthorized improvement from approximately 1970. It was scheduled for removal in 1989, but the budget was cut and the project was canceled. As far as we know, no one has used it in decades. Would someone need a permit to access that area? No, it is open forest. Anyone can hike there. But there are no trails. You would need navigation skills and proper equipment. It is rough terrain. Kozlowski thanked him and ended the call. He turned his attention to the four students themselves. He needed to understand who they were and why someone would want them dead. Brandon Pierce, 22 years old, geology major, grew up in Denver. Parents still lived there. Sister Melissa was 17 at the time of the disappearance, now 31. Father worked as an accountant. Mother was a nurse. No criminal record. No known enemies. Sarah Chen, 19 years old, computer science major at Metro State. Parents immigrated from Taiwan in 1980. Father owned a restaurant in Denver. Mother worked as a seamstress. Sarah had a younger brother, David, who was 15 in 1991. No criminal record. No known conflicts. Tyler Hammond, 20 years old, business major at CU Boulder, played linebacker on the football team. Parents divorced in 1988. Father was career military. Mother remarried in 1990 to a man named Dennis Vaughn. Tyler lived with his mother and stepfather in Colorado Springs when not at school. No criminal record. No disciplinary issues at school. Rachel Simmons, 18 years old, about to start engineering at Colorado State. Parents divorced in 1985. Mother worked as a teacher in Denver. Father was a truck driver based in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Rachel had lived with her mother during high school. No criminal record. Honor student. Kozlowski read through dozens of witness statements from the original investigation. Friends described Brandon as outdoorsy and responsible. Sarah was quiet and studious. Tyler was outgoing and athletic. Rachel was shy but brilliant at math and science. No one could imagine why anyone would want to harm them. The coroner called at 9. We have completed the preliminary autopsy on Brandon Pierce. Cause of death is dehydration and starvation. He died slowly over a period of approximately 1 to 2 weeks. No signs of physical trauma beyond the scratch marks on his fingers from trying to escape. He was alive when he was locked in that cabin. Kozlowski felt anger rising in his chest. Someone had deliberately left a 22-year-old man to die a slow, agonizing death. What about the notebook? The crime lab has it now. They are working on preserving the pages. Some of the ink has faded, and the paper is brittle, but they think they can recover most of the text. Should have results in a few days. How soon can we release the body to the family? We are finished with the autopsy. I will prepare the death certificate today. You can notify the family that they can make funeral arrangements. Kozlowski called Michael and Linda Pierce. He had spoken with them the previous evening to inform them of the discovery. Now he had to tell them how their son had died. Linda Pierce answered. Her voice was hoarse from crying. Sheriff? Mrs. Pierce, I have information about Brandon's death. The medical examiner has completed the autopsy. I need to tell you some difficult things. He explained the cause of death as gently as he could. Linda Pierce sobbed. He heard Michael Pierce in the background demanding to know what Kozlowski had said. Linda handed him the phone. Someone did this deliberately? Michael Pierce's voice shook with rage. Someone locked my son in a cabin and let him starve to death? That appears to be what happened, yes. Mr. Pierce, I need to ask you some questions. We are treating this as a homicide investigation now. I need to understand who Brandon was and who might have had reason to harm him. Brandon had no enemies. Everyone loved him. He was a good kid. Smart, kind, responsible. This does not make any sense. What about the other 3 students? Did Brandon have any conflicts with Sarah, Tyler, or Rachel? No. They were friends. Brandon and Sarah had been dating for about 6 months. He really cared about her. Tyler was his roommate at CU. They got along great. Rachel was Sarah's friend from high school. Brandon barely knew her before the trip, but Sarah wanted to include her. Kozlowski wrote this down. He had not known that Brandon and Sarah were dating. That detail had not appeared prominently in the original case files. Did anyone oppose their relationship? Sarah's parents were not thrilled at first. They wanted her to focus on school and not date until she was older. But they came around? They could see how happy Brandon made her. What about Tyler or Rachel? Were either of them in relationships? Tyler dated a lot of girls but nothing serious. Rachel was shy. I do not think she had ever had a boyfriend. Kozlowski spent another 20 minutes questioning Michael Pierce about Brandon's life, his habits, his friends, his activities. Nothing raised any red flags. Brandon had been exactly what everyone described, a normal, well-adjusted young man with his whole life ahead of him. After ending the call, Kozlowski walked to the evidence room. Deputy Morrison had logged all the items recovered from the cabin. In addition to Brandon's wallet and the notebook, they had found the remnants of his clothing, a watch that had stopped at 4:15, a belt, hiking boots, and a small pocket knife. Kozlowski examined the wallet. It contained Brandon's driver's license, a student ID from CU Boulder, $23 in cash, and a photo of Sarah Chen. She smiled at the camera, her black hair pulled back in a ponytail. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "Sarah, Spring Break, 1991. The watch had a cracked crystal and a corroded band. Kozlowski made a note to have it examined by a specialist. If they could determine when it stopped, it might help establish a timeline. The notebook remained at the state crime lab. That notebook was the key. If Brandon had written anything about what happened, it could solve the case. Kozlowski called the lab supervisor. "How long until we can see what is in that notebook? We are being extremely careful. The pages are very fragile. We are using humidity chambers and specialized lighting to preserve the ink and paper. Give us 48 hours. We should have preliminary photographs by then." Kozlowski returned to his office and began making a list of everyone he needed to interview. The families of all 4 students, their friends, their professors, anyone who had been in the Cottonwood Pass area in June 1991. It was going to be a massive undertaking, made more difficult by the 14 years that had passed. His phone rang. It was the Forest Service ranger he had spoken with earlier. "Sheriff, I found something you need to see. I pulled all the permit records for the Cottonwood Pass area from June 1991. There was a youth group camping trip that week. 23 teenagers and 4 adult chaperones from a church in Colorado Springs. They were camped about 3 miles from where those students disappeared." Kozlowski sat up straight. "Why was this not in the original investigation file?" "I do not know, but I have the names of all 27 people who were on that trip. One of the adult chaperones was Dennis Vaughn." The name hit Kozlowski like a punch. Dennis Vaughn, Tyler Hammond's stepfather. The man had been in the area when the 4 students vanished, and no one had ever connected the dots. The stepfather. Dennis Vaughn lived in a ranch-style house on the southern edge of Colorado Springs. Kozlowski drove there with Deputy Morrison on March 17th. It was a 4-hour drive from Buena Vista, but Kozlowski wanted to speak with Vaughn in person rather than over the phone. The house was well maintained with a neat lawn and trimmed bushes. A Ford F-150 truck sat in the driveway. Kozlowski knocked on the front door. A woman in her 50s answered. "Mrs. Vaughn? I am Sheriff Martin Kozlowski from Chaffee County. This is Deputy Morrison. We need to speak with Dennis Vaughn." The woman's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "What is this about?" We are investigating a cold case. Mr. Vaughn may have information that could help us. Is he home?" "He is in the garage. I will get him." She disappeared into the house. 2 minutes later, Dennis Vaughn emerged. He was tall and broad-shouldered, about 55 years old, with thinning gray hair and a weathered face. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt stained with grease. "I am Dennis Vaughn. What can I do for you?" Kozlowski introduced himself and Morrison again. "Mr. Vaughn, we are investigating the disappearance of 4 college students in June 1991 near Cottonwood Pass. One of those students was Tyler Hammond. I understand he was your stepson." Vaughn's expression hardened. "Was my stepson. I divorced his mother in 1999. Have not seen Tyler since 1991 when he disappeared. What is this about? We found remains yesterday that we have identified as belonging to Brandon Pierce, one of the 4 students. We are reopening the investigation into what happened to all 4 of them. I need to ask you about your activities during the week of June 14th through 18th, 1991. That was 14 years ago. You expect me to remember what I was doing during a specific week? You were leading a church youth group camping trip near Cottonwood Pass that week. 23 teenagers and 4 adult chaperones. The group was camped 3 miles from where the 4 students were last seen. Do you remember that trip? Vaughn crossed his arms. Yeah, I remember. We took the youth group from First Methodist Church up for a weekend retreat. Hiking, Bible study, campfire activities. We were there Friday through Sunday. The students disappeared sometime between the evening of June 15th and the morning of June 16th. That was a Saturday. You were in the area. So were probably 100 other people. It is a popular camping area in June. Did you see the 4 students during your trip? No. We were 3 miles away in a different campsite. We stayed with our group the entire time. Did any of the teenagers in your group report seeing anything unusual? Anyone wandering through the area? Any strangers? Not that I recall. We were focused on our own activities. The kids were supervised at all times. Morrison made notes as Kozlowski continued the questioning. What was your relationship with Tyler Hammond like? Fine. I married his mother in 1990. Tyler was 19 at the time. He was away at college most of the year. We were not close, but we got along okay. How did Tyler's mother react when he disappeared? Vaughn's jaw tightened. How do you think she reacted? Her son vanished. She was devastated. We both were. I helped with the search efforts. Took time off work to walk the forest looking for any sign of him. Why did you divorce Tyler's mother? That is personal and none of your business. Mr. Vaughn, one of the students who disappeared was your stepson. You were in the immediate area when they vanished. Your name does not appear anywhere in the original investigation file. I need to understand why. I was interviewed back then by deputies from Chaffee County. I told them everything I knew, which was nothing. Maybe they did not write it down, but I cooperated fully. Kozlowski made a note to check if any record existed of Vaughn being interviewed. The original case file was massive, with hundreds of witness statements. It was possible Vaughn's interview had been included, but not flagged as significant. Where do you work, Mr. Vaughn? I own a construction company. Vaughn Building and Remodeling. Been in business for 20 years. What type of construction? Residential. Houses, additions, renovations. Some commercial work. Do you do any work in remote areas? Cabins, hunting lodges, that sort of thing? Vaughn's eyes narrowed. Sometimes. Why? Brandon Pierce's remains were found in an abandoned hunting cabin in Pike National Forest. The cabin is in a very remote location with no marked trails. Someone would need detailed knowledge of the area to find it. Have you ever done work in that part of the forest? I have done work all over Colorado. I could not tell you every specific location without looking at my records. I am going to need those records. Every job you worked on between 1985 and 1995, particularly anything in Pike National Forest or near Cottonwood Pass. You need a warrant for that. I can get one, but it would be easier if you cooperated voluntarily. Vaughn shook his head. I think we are done here. If you want my business records, bring a warrant. Otherwise, get off my property. Kozlowski handed him a card. We will be in touch, Mr. Vaughn. If you think of anything that might help the investigation, please call me. Vaughn took the card and walked back into his garage without another word. As Kozlowski and Morrison returned to their vehicle, Morrison said, That guy is hiding something. Yeah, the question is what? Could be something related to the disappearance. Could be something else entirely. We need to dig into his background, pull his criminal history, business records, financials. And we need to find out why his interview from 1991 was not flagged in the original investigation. They drove back to Buena Vista. Kozlowski spent the rest of the day reviewing files and making phone calls. He spoke with the current pastor of First Methodist Church in Colorado Springs. The pastor checked the church archives and confirmed that Dennis Vaughn had chaperoned the youth group trip in June 1991. The pastor provided the names of the other 3 chaperones. Kozlowski called each of them. 2 had moved out of state. The third, a woman named Patricia Henderson, still lived in Colorado Springs. She agreed to meet with Kozlowski the next day. Patricia Henderson was 67 years old and retired from teaching. She met Kozlowski at a coffee shop near her home. She remembered the camping trip clearly. It was a wonderful weekend. The kids had a great time. We hiked, we sang songs around the campfire. We had Bible study in the mornings. Dennis Vaughn was one of the chaperones. He was new to the church at the time, having just married Susan Hammond. He volunteered to help with the trip. What was your impression of Dennis Vaughn? He was quiet, kept to himself mostly. He was responsible, made sure the kids followed the rules. But I always felt like there was something off about him. I could not put my finger on it. Did anything unusual happen during the trip? Patricia thought for a moment. There was one thing. On Saturday evening, Dennis went off by himself for several hours. He said he was going to scout a different trail for the next day, but he was gone from about 6 until after 10. We were about to send someone to look for him when he came back. Kozlowski felt his pulse quicken. Saturday evening. That was June 15th. The students disappeared that night. I did not know that at the time. We did not hear about the missing students until after we returned home on Sunday. When I heard the news, I did think it was strange that Dennis had been gone during that time. But I assumed it was just a coincidence. Did you ever mention this to the police? No. No one ever asked me. I thought about calling, but I did not want to make trouble for Dennis, based on nothing but a feeling. Kozlowski thanked Patricia and returned to his office. Dennis Vaughn had been in the area when the students vanished, had been absent from his group during the critical time window, and had never mentioned any of this to investigators. Either the original investigation had been incredibly sloppy, or Vaughn had deliberately avoided being questioned. The state crime lab called at 5 in the evening. Sheriff, we have preliminary results on the notebook. We have been able to photograph and digitize about 60% of the pages. Some are too damaged to read, but we have recovered several entries. I am sending you the files now. Kozlowski opened his email and downloaded the PDF files. The first page showed Brandon Pierce's name and the date, June 14, 1991, written in neat handwriting at the top. Below that was the first entry. Sarah, Tyler, Rachel, and I left Denver at 8 a.m. Stopped for breakfast in Bailey. Weather is perfect. Plan to set up camp near Cottonwood Pass and spend 4 days hiking and fishing. Sarah is excited. This is her first real camping trip. Tyler brought his guitar. Rachel brought enough food to feed an army. The second entry was dated June 15th. Camped at Trailhead last night. Set up 2 tents. Sarah and Rachel in one, Tyler and I in the other. Spent today hiking up toward Alpine Tunnel. Beautiful views. Saw elk. Tyler caught 3 trout for dinner. Planning another hike tomorrow. The third entry was also June 15th, but written later. Something strange happened tonight. A man came to our campsite around 7 p.m. Said he was with a church group camped nearby and asked if we had seen any teenagers wandering around. Said one of the kids in his group had gone missing during a hike. We said no, we had not seen anyone. He looked at all 4 of us very carefully, like he was memorizing our faces. Asked our names. Asked where we were from. Tyler told him to leave us alone. The man apologized and left. Something about him made me uncomfortable. The fourth entry was dated June 16th and written in shaky handwriting. We are in serious trouble. That man from last night came back with 2 other men around midnight. They had guns, forced us out of our tents, tied our hands, made us walk for hours through the forest. I have no idea where we are. They separated us, put me in some kind of cabin by myself, tied the door shut. I can hear Tyler shouting somewhere nearby, but I cannot see him. Sarah and Rachel are gone. I do not know where they took them. Why is this happening? The fifth entry was June 17th. Second day in this cabin. No food, no water. I tried to break the door, but it is too strong. Tried to break the window, but it is too small to climb through. Shouted until my voice gave out. No one can hear me. I am so thirsty. Tyler stopped shouting yesterday. I think they moved him somewhere else. Or worse. Sarah, if you are reading this somehow, I love you. Tell my parents I am sorry. The entries after that became increasingly desperate and incoherent as Brandon weakened from dehydration. The last readable entry was dated June 23rd. I am going to die here. Whoever finds this, please tell my family what happened. Tell them I fought. Tell them I tried to survive. Tell Sarah I love her. The man who did this was with a church youth group. He said his name was Dennis. Please find him. Please make him pay for what he did to us. The network. Kozlowski called District Attorney Helen Foster immediately after reading Brandon Pierce's journal entries. It was 7 in the evening, but Foster answered on the second ring. "Helen, we have a confession." Brandon Pierce kept a journal. He identified his killer as a man named Dennis, who was with a church youth group. Dennis Vaughn. "We have probable cause for an arrest warrant." Foster was quiet for a moment. A journal entry from 14 years ago written by a dying man is powerful evidence. But we need more. Defense attorneys will argue the journal could have been fabricated, or that Brandon was confused or delirious from dehydration. We need physical evidence linking Vaughn to the cabin. We need witnesses. We need a chain of events we can prove beyond reasonable doubt. Brandon wrote that there were 2 other men with Vaughn. That means we are looking at a conspiracy. Multiple perpetrators. We need to identify them. Start with Vaughn's associates. Business partners, friends, family members. See if anyone was with him during that camping trip. And we need to find out what happened to the other 3 students. If this was a mass abduction and murder, we need to locate their remains. Kozlowski called an emergency meeting with his entire investigative team at 8 that evening. 6 deputies gathered in the conference room. Kozlowski distributed copies of the journal entries. "We are treating this as a multiple homicide investigation. 4 victims: Brandon Pierce, Sarah Chen, Tyler Hammond, and Rachel Simmons. Primary suspect is Dennis Vaughn. He had opportunity and access. Brandon Pierce identified him by name in his journal. We need to build a case that will hold up in court." Deputy Morrison asked, "What was Vaughn's motive? Why would he kill his own stepson and 3 other students?" "That is what we need to find out. Brandon mentioned 2 other men. We need to identify them. I want complete background checks on Dennis Vaughn. Every person he associated with in 1991. Business partners, employees, friends, church members, anyone who might have helped him." Kozlowski assigned tasks to each deputy. Deputy Sarah Brennan would investigate Vaughn's business records and financial history. Deputy James Torres would interview everyone from the church youth group trip. Deputy Morrison would coordinate with the state crime lab on forensic evidence. Deputy Lisa Park would work with search and rescue to organize a grid search of the area around the cabin where Brandon's body was found. "We have 3 missing victims," Kozlowski continued. "Sarah Chen, Tyler Hammond, and Rachel Simmons. Brandon's journal indicates they were all taken to the same general area but separated. There could be other cabins or structures in that part of the forest. We need to find them." The team worked through the night. By morning, they had compiled a detailed profile of Dennis Vaughn. Dennis Michael Vaughn, born April 12, 1950, in Pueblo, Colorado. Served in the Army from 1968 to 1972, including 1 tour in Vietnam. Honorable discharge. Worked construction jobs through the 1970s. Started his own company, Vaughn Building and Remodeling, in 1982. Married twice before Susan Hammond. First marriage ended in divorce in 1979. Second wife died in 1985 from cancer. Married Susan Hammond in March 1990. Divorced her in August 1999. Deputy Brennan found something interesting in the business records. In 1988, Vaughn did renovation work on several hunting cabins in Pike National Forest. The work was contracted through a property management company called Summit Recreational Properties. The company managed cabins for wealthy clients who used them occasionally. Vaughn had access to at least a dozen remote cabins in that area. "Do we know which specific cabins?" Kozlowski asked. "The company went out of business in 1995. Records are incomplete. But I found building permits for 3 cabins within a 10-mile radius of where Brandon was found. Vaughn was listed as the contractor on all 3 permits." Kozlowski felt pieces falling into place. He knew that area intimately. He knew about abandoned cabins that no one visited. He had the perfect place to hide victims. Deputy Torres returned from Colorado Springs at noon with information from the church youth group. "I interviewed 8 of the teenagers who were on that trip. They are all in their late 30s now. Most remembered Dennis Vaughn as quiet and strict. 2 of them remembered him leaving the campsite on Saturday evening and being gone for several hours. One girl, Amanda Porter, said something that stuck with her. She saw Vaughn talking with 2 other men near the parking area on Saturday afternoon. She did not recognize them. assumed they were other campers. But she remembered thinking it was odd because Vaughn seemed angry and the men looked rough, not like the typical campers in the area. Did she describe the men? Oh, one was tall and muscular with a shaved head. The other was shorter with a beard and tattoos on his arms. Both looked to be in their 30s or 40s. Kozlowski had Torres work with a sketch artist to create composite drawings based on Amanda Porter's description. Meanwhile, he obtained a warrant for Vaughn's business records and bank statements from 1991. The bank statements showed interesting activity. On June 20, 1991, 5 days after the students disappeared, Vaughn deposited $15,000 in cash into his business account. On June 25th, another $10,000. The deposits were listed as payment for completed construction projects, but there were no invoices or client names attached. $25,000 in cash deposits within 10 days of the abduction, Deputy Brennan observed. That is not normal business practice. Most clients pay by check. Kozlowski called the IRS and requested a full audit of Vaughn's financial records from 1990 to 1992. If Vaughn had received large cash payments, there might be evidence of tax evasion they could use to bring him in for questioning. The state crime lab called with more results from the cabin. We found DNA evidence, hair samples from 4 different individuals. We are running them through CODIS now. We also found fingerprints on the inside of the door. Multiple prints, consistent with someone desperately trying to open the door from inside. They match Brandon Pierce's fingerprints from his driver's license application. What about prints on the outside of the door or the rope? The rope is too degraded, but we found partial prints on the exterior door frame. They do not match Brandon Pierce. We need comparison samples from your suspect. Kozlowski now had enough for an arrest warrant. He called District Attorney Foster. We have Brandon's journal identifying Vaughn by name. We have witness statements placing Vaughn in the area during the abduction. We have evidence he had access to the cabin where Brandon died. We have suspicious financial activity immediately after the crime. We have witness testimony of Vaughn meeting with 2 unidentified men the day before the abduction. I am requesting an arrest warrant for Dennis Vaughn on 4 counts of first-degree murder. Foster reviewed the evidence. The case is circumstantial but strong. I will take it to Judge Richardson this afternoon. Be ready to execute the warrant tomorrow morning. Judge Richardson issued the warrant at 4 in the afternoon on March 18th. Kozlowski assembled a tactical team. They would arrest Vaughn at his home at 6 the next morning. That evening, Kozlowski drove to Denver to meet with the families of the 4 victims. He started with Michael and Linda Pierce. They lived in a modest 2-story house in the suburbs. Melissa Pierce, Brandon's sister, was there too. She had driven up from Colorado Springs when she heard about the arrest warrant. Kozlowski explained everything they had discovered. He showed them photographs of the journal pages. Linda Pierce sobbed as she read her son's final words. Michael Pierce sat in silence, his hands clenched into fists. We are going to arrest Dennis Vaughn tomorrow morning, Kozlowski said. The evidence is strong, but I need to be honest with you. We still do not know where Sarah, Tyler, and Rachel are. Brandon's journal indicates they were taken to the same area, but held separately. We are searching, but it is a vast region. Melissa Pierce spoke. Tyler Hammond was Dennis Vaughn's stepson. Why would he kill his own stepson? That is one of the questions we need answered. The journal mentions 2 other men helped Vaughn. We are working to identify them. This appears to have been a planned operation, not a random act of violence. What could 4 college students have done to deserve this? Linda Pierce asked through tears. They did nothing. This was not about them. My working theory is they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. They saw something or encountered something that made them a threat. But we will not know for sure until we question Vaughn. Kozlowski visited the Chen family next. Sarah's parents, Wei and Ming Chen, still lived in the same apartment where Sarah had grown up. Her younger brother David answered the door. He was now 30 years old, married with 2 children of his own. The Chen family spoke limited English, so David translated for his parents. Kozlowski explained the evidence and the pending arrest as gently as possible. Wei Chen asked questions in Mandarin that David translated. My father wants to know if Sarah suffered. Did she die quickly or did she suffer like Brandon? Oh, I do not know, Kozlowski answered honestly. We have not found Sarah yet, but I promise you we will not stop searching until we bring her home. Ming Chen spoke rapidly in Mandarin, tears streaming down her face. David translated. My mother says she knew Sarah was dead. She felt it in her heart 14 years ago, but she always hoped she was wrong. Now she knows the truth. She wants justice for her daughter. We will get justice. I give you my word. The visit with Tyler Hammond's mother was more difficult. Susan Hammond had remarried after divorcing Dennis Vaughn. She now went by Susan Peterson and lived in Denver with her third husband. When Kozlowski explained that her ex-husband was about to be arrested for murdering her son, she collapsed. Her current husband, Robert Peterson, caught her and helped her to the couch. Are you absolutely certain Dennis did this? He asked. We have strong evidence. A witness who saw him in the area, financial records showing suspicious payments, and most importantly, Brandon Pierce's journal naming him. Susan Peterson looked up, her face pale. I knew something was wrong with him. I always knew. But I never imagined he could do something like this. Tyler was his stepson. He lived in our house. How could Dennis look at him every day and then murder him? That is what we intend to find out. The final visit was to Rachel Simmons' mother, Jennifer Simmons. She lived alone in a small apartment in Denver. Her ex-husband had died in a trucking accident in 1998. When Kozlowski told her they had identified the man who killed her daughter, she showed no emotion. I always knew she was dead, Jennifer said quietly. The police told me to hope, but I knew. A mother knows. Where is she? Where is my baby's body? We are searching. We found Brandon Pierce in a cabin. We believe the others are in that same area. We have teams searching right now. When you find her, will you call me immediately? I do not care what time it is. Day or night. I need to know. I will call you personally the moment we find her. Kozlowski drove back to Buena Vista at midnight. He got 3 hours of sleep before his alarm went off at 5. By 5:30, he and 8 deputies were in 4 vehicles driving to Colorado Springs. They arrived at Dennis Vaughn's house at 6:15. Kozlowski knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Dennis Vaughn, this is Sheriff Kozlowski. We have a warrant for your arrest. Open the door. No response. Kozlowski nodded to Deputy Morrison, who used a battering ram to break down the door. The team entered with weapons drawn. They cleared the ground floor. Empty. They moved upstairs. The bedroom was empty. The bathroom was empty. Dennis Vaughn was gone. They searched the entire house. In the garage, they found Vaughn's truck still parked. In his office, they found a computer with the hard drive removed. On the kitchen table, they found a handwritten note. You will never find them. They are gone, and the truth went with them. You think you know what happened, but you have no idea what this was really about. Brandon Pierce was not an innocent victim. None of them were. They knew too much. They saw things they should not have seen. We did what we had to do. If you are reading this, it means I am already gone. Do not waste your time looking for me. Kozlowski photographed the note and immediately put out an APB for Dennis Vaughn. Every law enforcement agency in Colorado received his description and photograph. Alerts went out to airports, bus stations, and train stations. His bank accounts were frozen. His credit cards were flagged. But Dennis Vaughn had clearly planned this. He must have been monitoring police activity. He knew they were getting close. He had fled sometime during the night. Deputy Morrison examined the note. He says Brandon and the others knew too much, saw things they should not have seen. What does that mean? It means this is bigger than we thought, Kozlowski said. This was not just about 4 students. There was something else going on. Something Vaughn and his accomplices were willing to kill to protect. The conspiracy. Kozlowski established a command center at the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office. Every available deputy was assigned to either the manhunt for Dennis Vaughn or the search for the 3 missing victims. The FBI was called in to assist with the interstate manhunt. Special Agent Marcus Reed arrived from the Denver FBI office on March 20th. He was in his early 40s, tall and lean with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He reviewed the evidence Kozlowski had compiled. This is not a simple murder case, Reed said. Vaughn's note indicates the victim saw something, Brandon Pierce was a geology student. Tyler Hammond was studying business. Sarah Chen was in computer science. Rachel Simmons was going into engineering. What could 4 college students see that would make them targets? The camping trip was near Cottonwood Pass, Kozlowski said. That area has been popular for outdoor recreation for decades. But it also has a history of illegal activity. Drug trafficking, illegal mining, poaching. In the early 90s, there were rumors of a major drug operation using remote forest locations as distribution points. Did the DEA have any operations in that area in 1991? I am checking. But if Vaughn and his accomplices were running drugs, and the students stumbled onto their operation, that would explain the motive. Kill the witnesses. Reed nodded. That makes sense. The 2 men Amanda Porter saw with Vaughn could have been his partners in the drug operation. We need to identify them. Run the composite sketches through criminal databases. Focus on people with drug trafficking convictions from the late 80s and early 90s who operated in Colorado. Deputy Brennan ran the sketches through the system. By afternoon, she had 3 possible matches. The tall man with the shaved head could be Victor Grimes. He had multiple arrests for drug trafficking between 1987 and 1995. Did time in Cannon City Prison from 1996 to 2003. Currently on parole, living in Pueblo. The shorter man with the beard matches either Robert Kostecki or James Marlowe. Both have drug-related convictions from the same time period. Bring them all in for questioning, Kozlowski ordered. Deputies picked up Victor Grimes at his apartment in Pueblo at 3 in the afternoon. He was 58 years old now, heavy-set with a completely bald head. He had the look of someone who had spent years in prison and did not care about much anymore. Kozlowski and Reed questioned him in the interview room. Mr. Grimes, we are investigating the murders of 4 college students who disappeared in June 1991 near Cottonwood Pass. We have evidence that Dennis Vaughn was involved. We have a witness who saw you with Vaughn the day before the students disappeared. We need you to tell us what happened. Grimes stared at the table. I do not know what you are talking about. Reed placed photographs of the 4 victims on the table. Brandon Pierce, age 22. Sarah Chen, age 19. Tyler Hammond, age 20. Rachel Simmons, age 18. All dead because of something you and Dennis Vaughn did. We found Brandon's body. His journal name's Vaughn. We know you were there. Help yourself by telling us the truth. Grimes looked at the photographs. His jaw tightened. I want a lawyer. You can have a lawyer, but if you cooperate now, the district attorney might be willing to make a deal. If you stay silent, you go down with Vaughn for 4 counts of first-degree murder. Colorado has the death penalty. Is that what you want? Grimes was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. I did not kill anyone. I was just there to move product. Vaughn and Marlowe did the rest. What product? Cocaine. We had a distribution operation running through Pike National Forest. Remote cabins. No one around for miles. Perfect drop-off points. Vaughn would pick up shipments from suppliers in New Mexico and bring them to the cabins. I would transport them to buyers in Denver and Colorado Springs. Marlowe handled security and logistics. What happened with the 4 students? Grimes rubbed his face. They were camping near one of our drop sites. Saturday afternoon, June 15th, Vaughn was supposed to pick up a major shipment. 5 kilos of cocaine worth $500,000 on the street. But when he got to the cabin, those 4 students were hiking nearby. They saw him loading duffel bags into his truck. One of them, the tall kid, took photographs. Tyler Hammond had a camera? Yeah. Vaughn panicked, called Marlowe and me, said we had to get those photographs or we were all going to prison. We met up with Vaughn that evening. Marlowe said we should kill them, make it look like they got lost in the forest. Vaughn said his stepson was one of them. Marlowe did not care. Said we had too much money invested to let 4 kids ruin it. Kozlowski felt cold rage building. 4 young people murdered over photographs. So you abducted them? Marlowe and I went to their campsite around midnight. We had guns. We forced them out of their tents and marched them into the forest. Vaughn drove his truck on service roads to meet us at different points. We separated them. Marlowe took the 2 girls. Vaughn took his stepson. I took the other guy, Brandon. You took Brandon to the cabin where we found him. Marlowe told me to lock him in and leave him. Said he would die of dehydration in a few days and no one would find him. That cabin was scheduled to be demolished by the Forest Service, but the project got canceled. Marlowe knew about it from Vaughn's construction work. It was perfect, isolated, hidden. What happened to the others? Grimes shook his head. I do not know. Marlowe and Vaughn handled them. I never saw the girls or Vaughn's stepson again after that night. Marlowe told me later they were taken care of. I did not ask questions. Where is James Marlowe now? Dead. He got killed in a deal gone bad in 1998, shot by rival dealers in Albuquerque. What about the photographs? The camera? Vaughn destroyed it, smashed it, and burned the film. He was thorough about eliminating evidence, made sure no one could connect us to the students. Reed leaned forward. You left Brandon Pierce to die slowly in that cabin. You heard him screaming and you did nothing. You are just as guilty as Vaughn and Marlowe. I know. I have thought about it every day for 14 years. When I got sent to prison in 1996 for the drug charges, I thought it was punishment for what we did to those kids. But I kept my mouth shut because I knew if I talked, Vaughn would have me killed. He had connections. Still does. Where is Dennis Vaughn now? I do not know. I have not seen him since 2003 when I got out of prison. But I heard rumors he was still in the business, working with a new crew, bigger operation, more ruthless. Kozlowski left Reed to continue the interrogation and returned to his office. He called District Attorney Foster. We have a confession from Victor Grimes. He confirms Vaughn killed the students to protect a drug operation. A third man named James Marlowe was involved, but he died in 1998. Grimes does not know where the other 3 bodies are. Can we charge Grimes? Yes. Conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, accomplice to murder. He admits to locking Brandon in the cabin. He is guilty even if he did not personally kill all 4. Bring him before a judge tomorrow. I will file charges. Now we need to find Vaughn and locate the other victims. Kozlowski returned to the search effort. Deputy Park had organized teams to search every abandoned structure within a 15-mile radius of where Brandon was found. By March 22nd, they had checked 18 old cabins, mine shafts, and shelters. No sign of the other 3 victims. On March 23rd, a search team found something at a collapsed mine entrance 6 miles from the cabin where Brandon died. Deputy Park called Kozlowski. Sheriff, you need to see this. We found human remains inside the mine shaft. Multiple individuals. Skeletal remains. They match the approximate age and gender of our missing victims. Kozlowski drove to the site with the county coroner. The mine entrance was partially hidden by fallen rocks and overgrown vegetation. No one would find it unless they were specifically searching. The search team had used ground-penetrating radar to detect the remains inside. The coroner entered the mine with full protective gear and lights. Kozlowski waited outside. 30 minutes later, the coroner emerged. 3 bodies, 2 female, 1 male, all approximately 18 to 22 years old based on bone development. Deceased for 10 to 15 years based on decomposition. They were placed deep in the mine shaft, about 80 feet from the entrance. Clothing remnants suggest they were bound. Cause of death appears to be blunt force trauma to the skulls. They were killed before being placed in the mine. Kozlowski closed his eyes. Sarah Chen, Tyler Hammond, Rachel Simmons, all murdered and hidden in a mine shaft. How soon can you identify them definitively? We will need DNA from the families. I can have preliminary identification within a week. The recovery operation took 2 days. The remains were carefully extracted and transported to the county morgue. Kozlowski called each family personally to inform them. The conversations were devastating. After 14 years of hoping, the families now faced the confirmed reality that their children were dead. DNA testing confirmed the identities on March 28th. The 3 bodies were Sarah Chen, Tyler Hammond, and Rachel Simmons. All had died from massive skull fractures consistent with being struck repeatedly with a heavy object. The coroner estimated they had been killed within hours of their abduction. They did not suffer the way Brandon did, the coroner said. Their deaths were quick, relatively speaking, but the brutality suggests rage or a need to ensure they could never testify. Kozlowski felt sick. 4 young people with their whole lives ahead of them, murdered because they happened to see a drug dealer loading cocaine into a truck. It was senseless and cruel beyond measure. The FBI manhunt for Dennis Vaughn continued with no success. He had vanished completely. No credit card use, no phone calls, no sightings. Reed suspected Vaughn had help, possibly from others in his drug network. Men like Vaughn do not work alone, Reed said. He had a crew in 1991. He probably has a crew now. They are hiding him, providing him with resources. We need to find out who he is working with currently. Deputy Brennan pulled financial records for Vaughn's business from 2000 to 2005. His company was profitable through 2003. Then something changed. His income dropped significantly. He took out loans, refinanced his house. Then in late 2004, suddenly he paid everything off. Paid off his mortgage, his business loans, everything. Where did that money come from? Another drug operation, Kozlowski said. He went back to what he knew, built a new network, made enough money to pay off his debts. The question is, who is he working with now? The answer came from an unexpected source. On March 30th, the DEA contacted Reed. They had been monitoring a drug trafficking organization operating in southern Colorado for the past 2 years. Wiretaps had picked up a name, Vaughn. We did not connect it to your case until we saw the APB, the DEA agent explained. But we have recordings of several phone conversations mentioning someone called Vaughn who handles transportation and logistics. Based on the descriptions, it could be your guy. Who is he working with? A crew out of Albuquerque run by a man named Carlos Mendoza. They move cocaine and methamphetamine from Mexico through New Mexico and Colorado to buyers in Wyoming and Montana. Vaughn appears to be their Colorado connection. We have been trying to identify him for months. Do you know where he is? Not currently, but we have surveillance on several properties associated with the Mendoza crew. If Vaughn contacts any of them, we will know. Kozlowski coordinated with the DEA to monitor all communications related to the Mendoza organization. Days passed with no activity. Then on April 4th, a wiretap picked up a phone call. This is getting too hot. The cops are everywhere. I need to disappear completely. The voice analysis matched Dennis Vaughn. The person on the other end responded, We can get you to Mexico, but it is going to cost $200,000, half up front. I can get the money. Where do I meet you? Alamosa. There is a warehouse on the south side of town, 2247 Industrial Road. Be there Friday at midnight. Come alone. Bring the money. We will have documents and transportation ready. The DEA immediately began planning an operation. Alamosa was a small city in southern Colorado about 3 hours from Buena Vista. The warehouse was a known location used by the Mendoza organization for storage and meetings. We will set up surveillance around the warehouse, Reed explained to Kozlowski. Let Vaughn arrive. Let him make contact with the smugglers. Then we move in and arrest everyone. We can get Vaughn and potentially roll up part of the Mendoza network at the same time. Friday, April 8th, Kozlowski traveled to Alamosa with a team of deputies. The FBI and DEA had positioned agents around the warehouse. At 11:30, a dark sedan pulled up to the warehouse. Dennis Vaughn got out carrying a duffel bag. 2 men met him at the door. They talked briefly, then went inside. At 11:55, Reed gave the signal. Federal agents and sheriff's deputies swarmed the warehouse from all sides. FBI, DEA, show me your hands. Vaughn tried to run, but agents tackled him before he reached the back door. The 2 smugglers surrendered without resistance. Inside the duffel bag, agents found $97,000 in cash. Kozlowski walked up to where Vaughn lay handcuffed on the ground. Dennis Vaughn, you are under arrest for the murders of Brandon Pierce, Sarah Chen, Tyler Hammond, and Rachel Simmons. Vaughn glared up at him with pure hatred. You have no idea what you have done. This is bigger than 4 dead students. You are going to regret this. The only person with regrets here is you. Achai. The interrogation. Dennis Vaughn sat in the interrogation room at the Alamosa police station, handcuffed to the table. Kozlowski and Reed entered at 2 in the morning on April 9th. They had let Vaughn sit alone for 2 hours, giving him time to think about his situation. Kozlowski placed a folder on the table and sat down across from Vaughn. Reed remained standing, arms crossed. "You are facing 4 counts of first-degree murder," Kozlowski began. "Brandon Pierce, Sarah Chen, Tyler Hammond, and Rachel Simmons, all killed in June 1991. We have physical evidence. We have witness testimony from Victor Grimes. We have Brandon Pierce's journal where he identified you by name. We have your own written confession left at your house. The district attorney is seeking the death penalty." Vaughn said nothing. "You have 2 choices," Reed said. "You can cooperate and tell us everything. Who helped you? Why you killed those 4 students? What happened to each of them? Or you can stay silent and face lethal injection. Colorado has not executed anyone since 1997, but they will make an exception for you." Vaughn leaned back in his chair. "I want a deal. Full immunity in exchange for information about the Mendoza organization. I can give you names, locations, shipment routes, everything." "You murdered 4 innocent people, including your own stepson," Kozlowski said coldly. "There is no deal that gets you out of a murder conviction. But if you cooperate fully, the district attorney might take the death penalty off the table. Life in prison without parole instead of execution. That is the best offer you are going to get." Vaughn considered this. "Life without parole. No death penalty. In writing. We will have the DA draw up an agreement. But you have to tell us everything. No lies, no omissions. Complete honesty. If we catch you in a single lie, the deal is void." Vaughn nodded slowly. "Get me the agreement." District Attorney Foster arrived in Alamosa at 6 in the morning. She brought a cooperation agreement drafted by her office. Vaughn read it carefully, then signed. Kozlowski started the recorder. "This is Sheriff Martin Kozlowski conducting an interview with Dennis Michael Vaughn on April 9, 2005, at 6:30 a.m. Also present are FBI Special Agent Marcus Reed and District Attorney Helen Foster. Mr. Vaughn has signed a cooperation agreement. Mr. Vaughn, tell us what happened in June 1991. Vaughn spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. "I was running a cocaine distribution operation with Victor Grimes and James Marlowe. We used remote locations in Pike National Forest as drop points. Suppliers would leave shipments in hidden cabins. I would pick them up and transport them to buyers. We had been doing it for 3 years. Made over $2 million. How did you get involved in drug trafficking?" "After my second wife died in 1985, I was depressed, drinking heavily. Met Marlowe at a bar. He was connected to dealers in New Mexico. Offered me a job transporting product. The money was good. Better than construction. I needed the money." Continue with June 1991. "I was supposed to pick up a major shipment on Saturday, June 15th. 5 kilos of cocaine. I went to the cabin where the suppliers had left it. But when I got there, I saw 4 kids hiking nearby. College kids. They were maybe 200 yards away. One of them had a camera. The tall one. Later I found out it was my stepson Tyler. Did they see you?" "Yes. They saw me carrying duffel bags from the cabin to my truck. Tyler took photographs. I saw the camera flash. I panicked, loaded the truck as fast as I could and got out of there. Called Marlowe immediately. Told him what happened." "What did Marlowe say?" "He said we had to get those photographs. If they went to the police, our whole operation was finished. We would all go to prison for 20 years. He said we needed to eliminate the witnesses." "And you agreed?" "I did not want to. But Marlowe was adamant. He said it was us or them. Either we dealt with the problem or the Mexicans we worked for would deal with us. Those guys do not tolerate mistakes. They would have killed me and my family if the operation got exposed. So you planned to murder 4 people to protect a drug operation?" "Yes." Vaughn showed no emotion. "Marlowe came up with the plan. He said we would wait until dark, then go to their campsite and take them. Move them to different locations. Make them disappear. Blame it on getting lost in the forest. Happens all the time in the mountains. Walk me through what happened that night." Vaughn took a breath. "I was chaperoning a church youth group that weekend. Gave me a legitimate reason to be in the area. Saturday evening I told the other chaperones I was going to scout a trail. Left the campsite around 6. Met up with Marlowe and Grimes at a service road. We went over the plan. Waited until after midnight. Then we hiked to where the students were camping. How did you find their campsite? I had followed them earlier that day, wanted to know exactly where they were. It was about 3 miles from where the church group was camping. Easy hike in the dark if you know the forest. What happened when you got there? Marlowe had handguns. We walked into their campsite quietly. They were asleep in 2 tents. Marlowe fired a shot in the air. Everyone woke up screaming. We forced them out of the tents at gunpoint, tied their hands with zip ties. Kozlowski felt his anger rising but kept his voice level. They must have been terrified. They were crying, begging. Tyler recognized me, started yelling, asking why I was doing this. I told him to shut up. Marlowe hit him with the gun, knocked him down. The girls were sobbing. The other guy, Brandon, kept trying to reason with us. Said we could take the camera, take the film. They would not tell anyone. Just let them go. But you did not let them go. No. Marlowe said it was too risky. They had seen our faces. They knew who I was. We had to get rid of them. So you marched them into the forest? Yes. Made them walk for hours. They kept stumbling, falling. The girls could barely keep up. Finally, we reached the area where Marlowe had scouted locations earlier. 3 old cabins and a mine shaft. Remote. No one ever went there. What happened next? Vaughn hesitated for the first time. Marlowe separated them. Told Grimes to take Brandon to the first cabin. Told me to take Tyler to the second cabin. He kept the 2 girls. What did you do with Tyler? Vaughn looked down at the table. I walked him to the cabin. He was crying, begging me not to hurt him. Said I was his stepdad. Said his mom loved me. Said he would never tell anyone. I almost could not do it, but I thought about what the Mexicans would do to me if I backed out, so I forced him into the cabin. He was still begging when I tied the door shut. You left your stepson to die in a locked cabin. Yes. How long did you leave him there? I went back 2 days later, Monday evening. He was still alive, barely conscious, dehydrated. I could have let him out, given him water, but Marlowe said if any of them survived, we were all dead. So I left him there. Went back Thursday. He was dead. Kozlowski wanted to reach across the table and strangle Vaughn. Instead, he asked, what did Marlowe do with the 2 girls? He took them to the mine shaft. I did not see what happened. But when I met up with him later that morning, he said it was done. They were gone. He had blood on his shirt and his hands. He killed them immediately? Yes. Used a rock, beat them to death, then dragged their bodies into the mine and sealed it with debris. Why did he kill them right away but leave Brandon and Tyler to die slowly? Marlowe said the girls would be harder to control. They could scream. Someone might hear. Easier to just kill them fast. The guys, he figured they were young and strong. Might survive a few days in the cabins, but eventually they would die, and no one would find them. Oh, except Brandon wrote about what happened in his journal. He identified you. I did not know he had a notebook. Neither did Marlowe. If we had known, we would have taken it. Reed spoke up. Why did you kill Tyler differently than Brandon? Brandon starved to death. Tyler died from dehydration? Tyler's cabin had a small leak in the roof. When it rained on Wednesday, he was able to get some water. It kept him alive longer. Brandon's cabin was completely sealed. No water. He died faster.